Okay, hello and welcome to today's panel discussion. I'm Gene Berry, an Avasant Fellow with 35 years of life and annuity, group, and property and casualty insurance experience. I have 25 years of experience as a Chief Information Officer with 3 different insurance carriers that primarily sold life, annuity, group, and wealth management products. Of those 35 years, 10 years were spent in the additional role of Chief Operations Officer, running all back office life and group insurance functions. And I have 10 years of experience in the property and casualty industry as a board member. Our topic for today is insurance at a crossroads, driving customer-centric product innovation. And I will be joined by 3 distinguished panelists, Chad Covelli, James Dewaker, and Michele Steele. So let's have our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Chad Covelli.
Everyone, I'm Chad Covelli. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Rockingham Insurance Company's Personal Lines Division, as well as the Chief Actuary. I've been with Rockingham for 3 years. Before my time at Rockingham, I spent 14 years at a top 10 carrier and 3 years at a direct-to-consumer startup insurance operation. Rockingham is a 150-year-old mutual carrier that writes personal lines and commercial lines in 2 states, and E&S program business nationwide. So I've spent the bulk of my career as an actuary in the product and pricing space, and really enjoy moving the insurance products forward. So thanks for having me today. Thanks,
Chad. James?
Well, thank you, Gene. James Dewaker, and I'm the Senior Vice President at Zensar Technologies, and my charter is to lead the insurance practice in the US. I work for the BFSI vertical within Zensar Technology, which is a mid-tier technology services firm. And I've been with Zensar for the last 6 months. And my role is to make sure that our clients are able to navigate through the digital transformation, particularly in the pandemic and the post-pandemic era. Prior to Zensar, I've been with Cognizant for the last 15 years, developing the insurance practice, primarily in the Southeast as well as Mid-Atlantic area. I've been in the business for about 35 years overall in insurance as well as in technology. Mechanical engineer by profession. I've had the opportunity to engineer a lot of successful solutions for our clients. And I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
All right. Thank you, James. And finally, Michele.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michele Steele. I'm currently the Vice President of Customer Experience at One America. I've been at One America now for 8 years and have held numerous roles within IT and our enterprise strategy function. I have over 20 years of IT experience, along with spending 14 years in pharma before I came to One America. And my current role over the past year has been to lead our COVID response for the entire enterprise, along with building and standing up an enterprise customer experience practice. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks, Gene.
All right, thanks, Michele. So let me just set the table for our discussion today. I think we all can agree that the pandemic has accelerated the need for every industry to improve upon its digital capabilities, and the insurance industry is certainly no exception. Insurance has really traditionally lagged many other sectors for several decades in making digital and technology advancement that appears to be at a crossroads as it struggles to digitally deliver products that are easy to research, understand, purchase, and service. We have disruptors in the industry that are developing new models that are pressuring the traditional ways insurance has been sold and serviced. And in today's panel discussion, we plan to explore the premise that insurance is at a crossroads. That need to drive customer-centric product innovation will be a requirement for insurance firms to continue to grow and thrive in the coming decades. We plan to explore topics such as the changing landscape of insurance, product development in the digital world, how legacy systems impact the digital journey, what is required from a modern IT or a modern insurance organization to compete, as well as several other topics. So let's get started with you, Michele, since you're responsible for customer experience at One America. Kind of a big question here to lead us off, but how has the pandemic changed life insurance buying preferences, and is it really possible or necessary to deliver an Amazon-like buying experience in insurance? And maybe you could finish up by telling us about how One America is reimagining the customer buying experience.
Jean, a great question. And I think to answer right off the bat, yes, it absolutely is. We've just done a lot of work around digging into voice of the customer around policyholders, and not just policyholders, but our distribution partners, and those challenges that this industry is facing are top of mind for everyone. It's not just about financial wellness anymore. It's about what's happening within my home. Everyone went home, had to be remote. So security in the home is top of mind for folks, along with how to keep their personal data secure. Consumers are increasingly price sensitive because of the recession and low interest rates, and are starting to demand that we deliver products that are of value for the money that they're spending with us. They also want flexibility in products as life events happen, and clearly we saw that as part of the pandemic, many folks losing their jobs, and they want the ability to have some supplemental cash on hand to help put food on the table. And those products that we offer, they want to be flexible and provide the opportunity to do that when times are hard. So our view in looking at building flexible insurance products for the future is going to be key for consumers, as shared value life insurance products along with bundled financial wellness capabilities start to emerge. And we start to see that shift in prescription to prevention from consumers.
Great, thank you. Chad, next with you. You are in the process of reimagining your auto and other personal lines products. And just how do digital capabilities shape your thinking as you design new products? And how is product design being influenced by Lemonade, Brute, and other disruptors?
Yeah, I think for auto insurance, digital really is the product design. Auto insurance has really become a commodity. So I think you have to really be smarter and faster at how you acquire customers. You have to be able to provide faster and better and slicker experiences for customers, not only for customers, but for agents. If our customers are getting packets of paper where they can't interact with our companies when they want or where they want, or they have to answer 40 questions just to get a quote, they probably won't act on it. And it creates opening for others that are providing that experience. And companies have to find those small carrots that hook everyone at the time of the quote. So, hey, that was fast. I'm going to stick with Rockingham. Or, at renewal, wow, that process was looking painless. I didn't get a huge packet of paper. They just sent it right to my email. So there's companies obviously out there doing that. I think, we're looking at everything possible from data to just the paperless world and many different things, and understanding what customers want. I really think it's about what the customers want, because I'm selling a very similar product to everybody else, and so I think for many companies it's a lot to chew on. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to be ready to transform. Our process is taking a year or two to get to where we need to be, and we won't be complete. It's going to be a constant iteration, and many things will change year after year that we'll want to improve upon. So it's an evolution is what I've been sharing with my group.
As a smaller carrier, Chad, do you think that the digital technology can level the playing field with some of the larger carriers that you compete with?
Yeah, I think it can. I think probably where I might compete for some business if is having a direct space where people can visit your website and learn more about small carrier, or the agents who are selling your products. They want a faster experience. They want to be able to quote a customer really, really quickly and spend more time talking to them about their coverages and their what their kids are doing these days, rather than asking them quote questions. So I think it does level the playing field, but I think it's going to be tough if the small organizations don't figure out a way to kind of get their way into making headway on the digital transformation.
Great. So James, as head of the U.S. insurance practice for Zensar, you get the opportunity to work with many different carriers, all types of insurance products. Just what changes have you seen as a result of the pandemic when it comes to the digital buying experience and the design of new products. And I'd be particularly interested in your view on this episodic insurance products and how they're transforming the industry.
Sure, Gene. I think that's a good observation on the episodic piece. I think, as Michele and Chad were observing, the coronavirus has consumers basically evaluating their insurance coverage all over again. And if you take from a broader perspective, I know I want to cover both life annuities as well as on the P&C side. If you take the life insurance coverage, from what I've seen so far, there's not been a very significant change in terms of the changes that the life insurance carriers have seen. What I've seen is, many of them have sort of, especially the mutuals. If you take all the mutuals, they've come ahead of the pack by offering a lot more forbearance. If you're in a company and you got laid off or furloughed, and you had a group life, for example, they let you have it for a longer period of time. They also make sure that the frontline workers who work through the pandemic, they're providing term coverage for a certain number of time, for free. So those are sort of the forbearance that I've seen that have shaped some of the life insurance, products and how they offer it, which in turn doesn't really make a lot of money for them, but it has created a lot of stickiness. There's a lot of mind share that has developed in the consumer for those mutuals, and the other carriers have done that. But in other words, the episodic pieces have not had much of an impact in the life side of the house. But if you take the P&C side, there's a couple of studies you may have seen, all of you have seen. I think 20% we have seen increase in digital adoption in 2020. Almost whether it's a mid-tier insurance firm or the top-tier insurance carrier, all have scrambled together to get there faster for the insurance, servicing for the clients in increased digital adoption. At the same time, usage-based insurance, like the episodic ones, because 72% of the people that we have surveyed in many couple of surveys that I've seen, are not commuting anymore. They don't want to have their, insurance, auto insurance the same way. So there are many carriers who've sort of voluntarily stepped in and said, I will refund you a piece of your policy. And, you know the names. I don't want to go into the different names because then it sets up different things. But several carriers in the Midwest have started refunding. So the number that I'm seeing is that almost $14 billion worth of premiums will be given back to the consumers over the next 1 year or two. That's a phenomenal change, primarily driven by the episodic nature of insurance. Now, the fact that in future, when you go back and get personal lines coverage, it will be whether it's the Airbnb or your auto car or any of those kind of insurance, we are seeing that the people clamor for those kind of opportunities. And lastly, I think this episodic piece and the use of telematics, whether, Progressive, we all know, started it way back. Everybody's now started to use it. It's caught on. And it's a fun fact, even in healthcare insurance, like dental, I've seen, like Beam, for example, they give you a little toothbrush and say, if you use this, and your premium is going to go down, and less visits to the dentist. So that's catching on.
Yeah, great answer, James. Well, let's continue with you, James. We hear a lot about omni-channel distribution models for insurance. Are their carriers really doing this successfully today? And can you sort of provide your thoughts on whether that's hype versus reality?
Yeah, it's you remember the old days. All of you remember the cross sell and the upsell. For every time you can do that, you can make $5. You'll be a millionaire by now, right? Mm-hmm. So the omni-channel is something similar in my view. But I think the fact that the demography has shifted, the fact that the pandemic has made it more digital. 4 times is what Bain was saying in their consulting survey. Like people who had digital transformation on their map, omni-channel on their map, they said we'll do it in 2024. Well, they did it in a hurry. They did that right now. So the omni-channel experience I've seen, especially in the P&C, is fantastic. It's moved way beyond because of a lot of platform-based providers that are modern, that are able to take out the old legacy and remove them and get them there. But in the old life annuity insurance, where the omni-channel is still there, but many of the life carriers, as we know, they are all struggling with the closed block and so many other stuff that the omni-channel experience. You don't want real give that kind of a customer experience. I know Michele knows this better than I do. To, you know, if somebody's calling in for a closed block, you want to treat them differently. But at the same time, if you have hired off the closed block to somebody as a provider, as a TPA, then you don't have the touch with the client. But if you had it with you, you want the same experience so that they'll have a cross-sell. So the omni-channel I'm seeing a little bit lagging in the life side, but on the PNC side, they are out there in the forefront. And what I've also found is the data, the enterprise data is so key. Because if I'm, you know, there were a lot of people are so frustrated repeating the same thing over and over again to the first person that they speak on the call center, and then they again have to a specialized center, and then they get transferred to something else. They just entered that in a chat bot, and they don't understand why the chatbot information that they gave is not there in the national call center, for example. So those are sort of things that we have seen, even in the PNC where there is a sort of a lag. 100% digital is there probably about 20% of our companies that we have seen. So that would be the way of the omni-channel adoption. And the last point I wanted to tell you is because of the omni-channel, the enterprise data, which people used to struggle with large projects for MDM, master data management, they all went through the wayside because people are in a hurry. They hollowed out their core. They put through good database engines or whatever, so they're able to get there faster. So the experience is very seamless. That's something that I've also seen.
Well, let's pull on this data thread a little bit further. And next question for Chad. I couldn't agree more that a robust data strategy is key to any insurance carrier succeeding. But you know, I've always said that anyone can collect data. The winners are those people that know how to use it and know how to use it to make real-time decisions. And I know data is near and dear to your heart, Chad. Just how is Rockingham planning to use data to improve the buying experience?
Yeah, James talked about something. He said he was talking about telematics, and one of the things that I find interesting with you know, the data that came out of telematics last 2020 in March when the pandemic hit was carriers that were using telematics instantly saw the miles drop. So being able to measure that and return the premiums to customers on a relatively quick basis was key. And we don't have a telematics program. We're looking at a telematics program, and honestly, I've always been on the fence because it's a big program. You know, if you don't run it right, sometimes it goes wrong. You spend a lot of money on it. But what we've been looking at is there are partners out there that have developed good programs to work with smaller carriers like us, and that allow us to digest their data, that work with us to understand the data. And I do think data is king. It's out there. Whether you want to believe it or not, your data is all out there. So if you're going to a national carrier or even some regional carriers, putting in your information, they can return pretty much what they need to know to quote your policy. And that's kind of where the world is going. Having that data available and being able to provide that, to me, that's part of the digital experience, is that you don't have to spend all that time trying to work up a quote. We know everything about you, so why not use that? And it's really the companies that are doing it well are working with those that have figured out how to streamline it and bring it to companies quicker, so that I'm not buying data from these 5 different sources and trying to piece it together. The other part of it is digesting it and figuring out what to do with it. We're a small company. I don't expect to hire an army of data scientists, but we'll have a few people internally, and there may be some providers out there and opportunities for us to work with some AI firms. We've tested some AI firms out, looking at some predictive modeling and some machine learning that will really help us understand our data. So while we'll bring in a lot of data and maybe use some of it for pricing, some of it for underwriting, there's a lot of it that I think will tell us some things that we just haven't known about our customers before, to provide them different experiences or provide them better rating, things like that. So data is one of those things that it's only as good as how you set it up. And as an actuary, I've spent, seems like half of my career messing around with data and helping people put it in the right place and make sure that it's available to our teams to analyze it and do the right things with it. Companies have a lot of data available to them, and you just have to make sure you sit down and map out your data strategy. We've got a data team that it was, when I first started, it was one person, and now we've tripled it, and we're working on making sure that we're housing our data in the right place and giving it to the right people internally. And And where we can't chew on some of it, we work with some partners and find the right player in the insurtech space to help us figure out what to do with it and how to advance Rockingham.
Great, thanks, Chad. So James, you brought up legacy systems, and that's a loaded area for most insurance companies. So Michele, I'll turn to you and just legacy systems, boy, they just seem to be the boat anchors that weigh down so many insurance carriers and sort of stand in the way of achieving the digital plans that they have. What are your thoughts about, can a robust digital experience coexist with multiple legacy systems, or do we really need some sort of back-end legacy system upgrade? Is that inevitable to succeed long-term?
No, I think it can absolutely be achieved. I don't think that we're ever, at least for a while, going to get out of having legacy environments in place with policies that live on those systems. Gene, you know as well as I do, we had systems, I think, that were older than us in One America. So, those policies are going to continue to be in force. And I think thanks to the emergence of insurtech and some of the new digital capabilities, we now have a way to integrate these systems. And we have a way to do it without the major overhauls that take 3 to 5 years to get those large programs done. I think the one thing that the pandemic taught us was, one, we had to be focused, so we moved quick. And we got things done in a matter of weeks that we initially thought would take us a year or two, because we just didn't have the time. We had to get people home working remotely and productively. So I think we learned that sometimes we're probably all our own worst enemy as we look at how these systems integrate together. And I think some of the newer and emerging insurtechs and other technology companies are paving the way to show us how to do it. And if we can find ways, and I think we are, connecting through APIs and service layers so that we can connect to our data environments faster, then partner that with your service layer and your presentation layer, and you've got a huge win. So I think also, as you look at some of those outdated processes that go along with the legacy systems, those had to be overhauled in the last year because you had to learn how to automate. So some of it happened out of the necessity for survival in our space. So having the ability to think outside the box and do what you needed to do during the pandemic, I think really paved the way for us to learn from that experience and to keep this digital push moving forward.
Thank you. So what are you seeing, James, across your client base? Are you seeing a lot of your customers really taking on these legacy system modernization projects, or are they finding alternative ways to deal with that particular issue?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, Gene, and what Michele was saying, the legacy is there, and it's more tilted towards the life side, I would say, the life or the group benefits, work side, long-term policies, long-term care policies. Those are not written anymore, not profitable for many carriers. They're sitting there, and a huge amount of balance sheet reserves are sitting there just for that. And they're a little slow to sort of react. Only now we are seeing signs of green shoots coming up there. If you take the P&C business, for example, you had a big push in the likes of Guidewire or Duck Creek or some of those kind of platforms that have come in, sort of help the P&C carriers move off the old client server Exceed or CSC systems faster in the P&C area as opposed to the life side. And I've seen the systems of record have completely changed. They've sort of, 3 different towers for policies, for billing and for claims. They're able to coexist with their data, whatever systems you are. They have their system of intelligence on top. And to Chad's point, the data is very symmetric. In the life side, it's the touch points for the carriers with the consumer is so limited. And sometimes if it's group life, it's a B2B2C model. It's kind of limited to, who the plan admin is or the HR person is. So it's a little bit convoluted. So there's a lot more time for them. But still, we are seeing green shoots, as I said. A lot of new technologies have come. People have raised their hand and say, look, I'll be the first one to move off my old big iron and then try to get on this one. So that's what we're seeing there, Gene.
Okay, great. Thanks, James. So let's move on to another topic here, and let's just talk about what the modern IT organization needs to look like, or how it needs to be, structured. We've gone from the plan, build, run models to having IT departments being really organized more around products. But with digital coming so fast, what does that IT organization of the future look like, or what does the modern insurance company need to look like or be structured like moving forward? And maybe you could take that one, James, and kick us off.
Sure. Thanks, Gene. I think I'll pick up where Michele was talking about the system of record. So if you can visualize in 3 different layers, you have the conventional insurance system of record that we always hold the sacrosanct, and then we have a system of engagement, the services and presentation layer that Michele used. All of the energy and attention is on the top, on the system of engagement and services. But I think we have to look at the system of record, because competition is coming. Amazon is getting into life insurance. Everybody is, first we thought Google was, and then Google backed out. But now we have Amazon coming in. So the modern IT shop that we see, many of our clients, at least in the tier 1s, are sort of retooling and rejigging their position is data. We talked about chat and how data was so important. Having the data, having the AI, ML interface to it, so that they are as nimble as the newcomer, the startup, is something that we have seen. Of course, everybody's on the digital transformation. You would have heard of agile, safe agile, DevOps, Sec DevOps. These are all table stakes for us. I wouldn't even call them modern. But I would like to have some TikTok skills. I would like to have some Instagram skills. Those are the skills that my programmers should have, so that they're able to look at the changing demography. There's a talent scarcity right now. You have about 26, 27% of the top folks in insurance retiring in the next 3 years or going away. And if you look at the other side, the incoming, there's only 3 or 4% of the youngsters who want to be in the insurance industry. So we have a talent scarcity, we have a skill scarcity, and the competition is coming and lapping them up. So the modern IT, in my view, should have a mix of what we are doing currently, as well as the skills of the future, like I just talked about.
Okay, thank you. What are your thoughts on that, Michele?
So I think the big thing is that everyone needs to understand that digital is the way we're going to do business moving forward. It's becoming a business model. And as life insurance goes through the transformation in the next decade, with that personalization of every aspect of the customer experience, and developing that flexible product solution model that's going to have to withstand that challenging regulatory and interest rate environment as well. So reinventing internal skills and capabilities for associates that can handle the demand of new tech and automation of the future is going to be absolutely important. So as you talked about, James, data, how to look at data and what it's telling you in large amounts of aggregate information, how we use robotics and AI in the future to start providing predictive analytics is absolutely going to be key. But I think too, even on the more soft skill side of truly having empathy skills, communication and business acumen are really going to help propel understanding what's needed from a customer experience standpoint, because that I believe the merge of business and IT is only going to get stronger in the future. So IT is going to get much closer to the customer. So having those skills is going to be really important for the future.
Great, thank you. So you touched a little bit on robotics, and James, I heard you talk about AI and machine learning. Maybe Chad, I could turn to you. Where do you see all these emerging or newer technologies? Where do you see them being applied in your business moving forward?
Yeah, I sort of think about it from the data side of things. We've used robotics before to help us with some simple processes that have been cumbersome and maybe took 50% of someone's time entering information into a policy system. And we had a state-of-the-art system at that point, but there were some processes that we still had. So utilizing robotics for some of the more mundane tasks or tasks that, maybe you can repurpose some of those people to be thinkers or play a different role in your organization, I think will be key. I think from the AI standpoint and the data standpoint, I think it's really, having some of the bandwidth to take that, AI or machine learning or whatever the functionality is, and digesting what your data is telling you and reacting upon it. And it could be simple stuff like, what do your customers want? I think those are things that, there's a lot of data that we get as an insurance company, but some of the data that we don't collect very well are things like, what do the customers want? What are we serving our customers? Do they like this process? Do they like what we're giving them? And I think that's a key to the digital transformation, is you don't just want to feed them whatever you think is best. You want to drive your systems and your digital transformation based on what your customers and your agents are telling you that they need. So I think that's a big piece of the data, is digesting what are they telling you? What are you hearing from them? And how are you going to act upon it?
One of the things that, or one of the areas that's traditionally been a bit of a laggard that's slowed, especially in the life insurance industry, it's slowed a lot of companies down, is they've automated, from a straight through processing standpoint, the front end and the back end, but they really haven't touched that underwriting engine so much in the middle. Your thoughts, Michele? Is there a place for machine learning and AI to really try to streamline and really compress the amount of time from application to delivery of a policy using those technologies?
Absolutely. I think that's what we're starting to see emerge, is this one-touch underwriting. I think over the next several years, it's going to become the norm. And I want to pull a little bit on a thread that Chad talked about earlier around underwriting and actuary. I think part of what is going to help with that is our ability to look at data sets differently. It's been a challenge for us. Our actuary group, they're amazing, but they want to look at the data the way they want to look at the data, the way we always have from an insurance perspective. And we saw some of this emergence in my time at pharma, that you had all these differing data sets to tell you now about the patient and what they were experiencing. That's going to be similar for us as consumers change their buying patterns and their habits based on their life events. So we're going to have to use different data models that tie into that whole underwriting process, so it's much simpler for them to get coverage when they need it, but to also provide those flexible products that we talked about.
Thank you. What are you seeing, James, from an underwriting standpoint and across your client base?
Well, definitely in the PNC world, it's a much faster, way I've seen. And, we've seen the most egregious examples with Lemonade, with their example of the Belgian crystal in Midtown Manhattan. It's flat, from, putting in a claim. But on the underwriting side, we have not seen that kind of examples. To Michele's point, we have seen examples where people like Ancestry.com and 23andMe have got together. So say, look, if you're willing to give me enough data of yours, and if you're not worried about so much of your privacy, we can get this down flat in a few seconds. And of course, non-fluid underwriting is always, we have seen that sort of thing come forward. That would be the culmination of the fastest underwriting in life.
Yes. Good. Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our panel discussion today, and I'd like to give each one of you the opportunity to sort of close us out with your final thoughts and remarks, and just what advice you would like to leave with our audience today. And I think we can allocate about 2 minutes per person. So let's start with you, Michele.
So two things for me that I'd like to leave the group with is, one, know your customer. Don't make assumptions. You know what they want. So you're going to have to get out there and dig in and ask them in different ways, what is it that they want and what products are really relevant for them, and also the relationship that they want and expect from you. So everything that they're experiencing, from Amazon to Disney to Starbucks, you know, Apple, you name the customer or the companies that do customer experience really well, those are the experiences that they're having day in and day out. And so when they have a need from a life insurance perspective, those are the experiences that they're bringing to the table, and that we're going to have to think about providing in the future. So, you know, building those experiences and figuring out what our digital and business models in the future are going to be key. And data is absolutely going to drive your ability to achieve this. So we talked about it many times. Data is king. You can't know who your customer is if you don't have the data, and you can't know who they are and where they are in the journey with you unless you have that. And I think the second thing I would say is don't be afraid to fail fast. So try something different. Put some pilots out there, put some different products out in pilot, and, you know, and test the markets in different ways. I think that's the other piece the pandemic has taught us, and our ability to move fast, and being able to do that and fail fast and pivot as necessary is going to be key for us moving forward.
Thank you, Michele. What are your closing thoughts, Chad?
I think you have to be open to exploring. You asked James and Michele a question about the IT structure and what it has to look like. I think the product team or the business side of the house also has to be prepared for digital transformation. If I'm not ready for it as the product guy, my IT team is not gonna do anything for me. I wouldn't expect them to go out and say, hey, by the way, we're gonna put this app out there. So, you know, the business side of it has to be prepared. And, you know, even if you're not ready, my recommendations would be find somebody in your organization that has that knack or has that, you know, interest to innovate, and have them start networking and connecting with insurtech firms out there. We've networked with so many over the last couple of years that, you know, we found ones that worked for us. We found ones that we knew wouldn't work for us. We found ones that were very interesting and had something that we wish would work for us. And we just didn't think we'd get there with them. And they're becoming smarter, and that, you know, they're bringing on insurance people, and, you know, they're learning the insurance world. And so that's what I think is really helping some of the development. Even if it's bringing on an intern to study your customers and, you know, just sift through some of your data and learn about digital, and just don't be afraid to look at your competitors' websites and do a quote. I've done that many times, and I'm sure they're sick of seeing my name come across, but I'll use my wife's name, but you know, figure out who does it best, and you know, don't copy them, but try to replicate that experience and try to figure out if your customers want that experience. Michele's right about that. You can't just force stuff on your customer that they don't want. You know, and there's a lot of opportunity out there to improve processes, and you know, straight through underwriting is one of the key things that we're looking through. And if you've got the right data and you're bringing in the right stuff, you can get there. It's going to take a while, but you can get there.
Great, thanks, Chad. We'll close with you, James.
Oh, excellent. You know, I was listening to Michele and Chad, and I think, you know, some of the points I might have to reiterate, especially the customer experience and data. In my view, I think, you know, many of the viewers of this particular, you know, webinar are very experienced, I'm pretty sure, but the customer experience should be exemplary. I mean, that's what I have two daughters. They always compare the shopping experience of something else to insurance. So empowerment is important, you know. Are we empowering them for self-service? Are we empowering them for anywhere connectivity, for the omni-channel that we talked about? They get so frustrated they can do only 60% on their own, and then they have to call somebody. They hate talking to somebody. And then the second one is engagement. We have to be engaged, you know, the real-time capability, everything should be pushed. We cannot afford batch updates in these days. And then the last one in terms of experience is excitement. Are we personalizing their UI? Are we personalizing the product recommendations? Are we having some gamification? So something to excite them. So that would be my view on the customer experience, because everybody talks about it. So many customer journeys are there, but we have to make sure that this is somehow woven in. And then the last piece I would probably say is in terms of cost. You know, the CFOs would love to hear this. We have to optimize the cost. There's so much of development cost, but we are seeing the emergence of, what we call as low code, no code, so that, folks like Chad and Michele can get together with somebody else in the room and then put those pieces together so they don't need an army of technicians to do that sort of thing. So there is a cost optimization play there. The cloud operations, the platform providers, we have to be embracing them. They are our helpers, So I think that's the shift that I'm seeing that will help us overall reduce our cost of labor, and then even on financials. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you, James. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time, but I would sincerely like to thank Zensar for sponsoring our session today and appreciate the insightful comments from all three of our panelists. So thank you, James, Chad, and Michele. And if the audience has any additional thoughts or questions for our panelists, once they see this webinar, I would encourage you to reach out to them directly. So this concludes today's session. I encourage you to stay tuned in the Avasant's Empowering Beyond 2021 conference and take advantage of the thought-leading content that's being delivered through the various sessions that are being offered today and tomorrow. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Gene, thanks, Michele.